Jeff Reichert emphasizes in his film that right now, across the country, our two major political parties are gearing up for a once-a-decade war whose winner will control Congress over the next 10 years and possibly more. There will be battles in every state, and each will be kept carefully hidden from the prying eyes of average voters who only become more disenchanted with their government with each meaningless election. Democrats and Republicans collude to keep these skirmishes private so that they can maintain control over the ultimate political weapon, the ability to directly determine the outcome of elections. Why bother stuffing ballots when they can draw districts? For the first time, gerrymandering exposes the most effective form of manipulating elections, short of outright fraud. After the 2020 census is finished, will you know where your district went? My intention today is to raise awareness on what gerrymandering is, especially in current times while the 2020 census is being conducted. As a student who is studying the United States Constitution and political science, I felt it was important for me to share this knowledge. This is also a topic that I'm very passionate about. This talk is divided into four main parts. To start with, I'd like to educate you on what gerrymandering is and look at the history behind the term. Then I will be discussing what redistricting is and in connection to gerrymandering. Thirdly, I will address who is responsible. My fourth point will focus on what is being done about it. And finally, I'll be looking at the current status of gerrymandering. At the end of my talk, there will be a chance to answer any questions. You may ask, why does this matter to me? Everyone in America lives in a district, several actually, including congressional, state senate, assembly, city council, and schools. According to the Brennan Center for Justice, gerrymandering describes the intentional manipulation of district boundaries to discriminate against a group of voters on the basis of their political views or race. The district boundaries are determined by the census count, which, as I mentioned, happens every 10 years. First slide, shows Governor Elbridge Gerry. Elbridge Gerry was one of our founding fathers, as well as the fifth vice president. In 1812, under his presidential election, the Massachusetts State Senate districts were redrawn. If you look at the next slide, you'll see the famous illustration known as the gerrymander, which exemplifies newly constructed districts. It kind of looks like a salamander as well. It's known as the salamander district, as well as the gerrymander. In doing so, this influenced the establishment of gerrymandering. Let's move on to the process of redistricting. Political power is based on population. Census determines how many representatives are assigned to each state. There are 435 members in the House of Representatives, and to determine the congressional districts, you have to take the United States population and divide it by the 435 members. After the census numbers are calculated, the state legislators draw district boundaries. This is called redistricting. How an individual draws boundaries can determine the outcome of elections, which leads me to my next point, to identify who is responsible. The state legislators are in a position to influence the process of gerrymandering. They intentionally draw boundaries into peculiar shapes to manipulate the outcome of elections. The party that holds the majority of seats controls the state legislators, ultimately drawing their competition out of the district. Both political parties have engaged in gerrymandering. Historically, it's been more successful for Republicans versus the Democrats. This next image illustrates district boundary outcomes. A good example of partisan gerrymandering is the story of Hakeem Jeffries. In 2000, Hakeem challenged incumbent Roger Greene, who has been an assembly member of the 57th District of New York for 20 plus years. Hakeem had his doubts because he had no political background and no political recognition, as well as he had no money to campaign. After losing, he decided to try again in 2002 for the next term. He ran again, but this time redistricting process intervened. This made other residents concerned because they carved Hakeem's residence out of the district to eliminate the potential loss. Other residents were concerned because they were drawn out of their district as well, and they've been living there for decades. Since 1980, California was reconstructed 5 times. With the next images, there's 2 images so you can compare. You're able to compare California's district changes over the course of 5 years. I'd like to turn my focus to what is being done about it. Kathy Fung from California, from the California Common Cause, expresses her concern from the result of gerrymandering. She has been working with the League of Women Voters, AARP, and Common Cause to implement Proposition 11, also known as the Voters' First Act. This is something that has been developing for 3 years, and each year, when presented, the legislators break their promises and deny. Sorry. Proposition 11 was implemented to defend citizenry. Prop 11 was meant for community testimony to be listened to, for voters to have their power back, and to unite communities so they have something to fight for, something to vote for. The support of Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger and his publicity helped bring to the attention of many more supporters. Proposition 11 was passed in 2008, which gave citizens redistricting power over state legislators to draw the boundaries. This is a law for California, but all throughout the United States, organizations are pushing to inform citizens. Just as Low and Lee state, informed citizens are our democracy's greatest defense. So far, I have presented what gerrymandering is, the process of redistricting, who is responsible, and what is being done about it. Finally, I would like to cover the current status of gerrymandering. It is said that partisan gerrymandering is unconstitutional, which has led to the states wanting to follow California's lead and giving the redistricting power to individual commissions. This controversial issue is being tossed around in court to implement freedoms within each state without violating their constitution. As you can see, gerrymandering is still being used today. How can we promote democracy abroad when we aren't practicing it correctly within our nation? The best we can do is stay educated and fight for what we believe in. Let your voices be heard. Allow your voices to be heard. I ask again, after the 2020 census is finished, will you know where your district went? Thank you for your time. And does anybody have any questions?